portion of this video is brought to you by Ground News. For more information about Ground News, visit the link in the description or wait till the end of this video to hear more from me. This is a document that the Republicans use as a prop. I know I say this a lot, but it gets no more true as time goes on. Right now, there's a concerted effort by Donald Trump to follow through with his promise, his theory that a fraud of this massive and widespread deception, this was from December, I believe, of 2022, where he said that a massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. So Donald Trump signals his intent, his willingness to not just violate the Constitution, but terminate the document that they pull out of their pockets and act like they care about. The same document to which they've sworn oath to support and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And there's no more stark an example of their willingness to terminate the Constitution, to disregard the Constitution, than this tweet from J.D. Vance. They've taken a couple L's in the courts for their absolutely insane extra constitutional attempts to reshape our government, to shutter government agencies that were created through constitutionally mandated power of the Congress and the executive branch. And they're losing their minds right now. This is for the tweet from J.D. Vance. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. We'll get to that. If a judge tried to command the attorney general and how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. That last statement's just wholly untrue. Going all the way back to the third presidency of the United States, when Thomas Jefferson was president and James Madison was the Secretary of State, you may have heard of a case called Marbury versus Madison, where the courts rule absolutely have judicial review. They have the ability to provide judicial oversight and control, if you will, as a check on power of the executive branch. They also have checks over the legislative branch. They can rule laws unconstitutional. It's how our founders set up the government. Well, let's get to a couple points on this tweet, though. I wasn't going to do this, but here we are. So if a judge tried to tell the military how to conduct their military operation, or a general, that would be illegal. However, if a case was brought that rules of engagement were illegal, and a judge said, no, well, you can't do it this way because it's against the Constitution, it would be legal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be proper, but if a case got to, after the attorney general, Pam Bondi in this case, used prosecutorial discretion to bring a case, and it got all the way to the judge, and the judge said, well, I'm going to throw this out because this is bullshit. That's how it works. And J.D. Vance knows that, being an Ivy League trained attorney. So when yesterday Donald Trump was interviewed on Air Force One on his way to the Super Bowl, he was asked about this opinion by J.D. Vance. And he, not as articulately, because Donald Trump is just an abject fucking moron who can't think or doesn't understand any more complex concepts than like a third grader can. He was asked about this notion from J.D. Vance. And then he said something stupid about how it's a disgrace that these judges are doing this. It's a disgrace. Watch this and we'll analyze it with a little bit more depth than what I just provided on the other side.
You suffered a couple court losses, Mr. President, and J.D. Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive power. What's your take on that?
Well, we're going to see what happens. We have a long way to go, and we're talking about fraud, waste, abuse. And when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling. But we have a long way to go. We have to find all of the fraud that's going on. We have tremendous fraud, tremendous waste, and tremendous abuse, and theft, by the way. And the day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
And by extension, Donald Trump thinks the Constitution itself is a disgrace. Look, this is a classic, oh, well, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. Because he doesn't know the ins and the outs. He knows less this term than he did the first term, because now he's surrounded himself with sinister sycophants who will do his bidding, or they will do their bidding that he has signed on to. That we're going to see what happens, and that we're not going to have a country anymore if he's not allowed to seek out fraud, waste, and abuse. If he's not allowed to stop congressionally appropriated and executive signed appropriation from a previous administration, then we don't have a country anymore. While he flagrantly violates the Constitution of the United States, while he flagrantly, publicly expresses sentiments about the fact that the Constitution is no longer the valid ruling document of our republic. And Republicans, both elected Republicans who are just bootlicking lapdog sycophants, but also rank and file voters of the Republican Party who have for generations clamored about the Constitution and being constitutional purists and being textualists and being originalists. All of these people are either supporting this or it's crickets from the peanut gallery while Donald Trump runs roughshod over the constitutionally designed, mandated, controlled separation of powers between the co-equal branches of government, the judiciary, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. It could be, it's no more clear this time around than it was the first. I mean, it is absolutely, if you're out there and you're a Republican, you're a troll watching right now, and you've made this claim, you can just stop saying it at this point. If you served in the military and you actually did raise your right hand and swear an oath to the Constitution, you are violating your oath. You are a traitor to your oath. Your word is no good. Because Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Project 2025 are attempting to terminate, as Donald Trump promised in 2022, the Constitution, granting him king-like powers. And his vice president is on record. He's on record multiple times. And some would say, well, he just doesn't understand because he's stupid. Yeah, that's great. But it doesn't, not being aware of the Constitution, when you take an oath, it should matter to someone. It certainly matters to me. Anyway, I would love your opinion on this. I invite you to this conversation. You can comment below. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can email me, as always, daily at dollemore.com. Please consider supporting the work. You can go to dollemore.com, check out your options there, buy some merch. You can also become a channel member right here. Click the join button, patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. All the ways to help support what I think is important work, and I hope you do too. Anyway, follow me on social media. I am at Dollemore just about everywhere. I'd love to see you there, and I will see you next time. Until then, be genuine and take care of one another. You hear me regularly talking about Trump's playbook to consolidate power. But his appointment of Kari Lake to lead Voice of America takes his attacks to a uniquely disturbing level. Lake, like Trump, has made a career of attacking journalists and denying facts. She will now be in charge of an independent network whose purpose is to provide unbiased reporting. If you search this story on Ground News, it's laid out for you. Hundreds of articles clearly organized by perspective, and nearly all of them flagging serious concerns about the editorial independence of Voice of America. And yet, the America First crowd continues to call this appointment fair. The rest of us should call it what it is, though: propaganda. Trump knows that controlling the narrative is the first step to controlling the populace. Don't take my word for it, though. Go see for yourself. I use Ground News to help me critically analyze the news, and you should too. When algorithms decide the news you see, it's easy to feel powerless and uninformed. Let Ground News help you get a more complete view of the story. They are the only platform not trying to tell you what to think. For a limited time, you can get the same Vantage plan I use for nearly half the cost. Go to ground.news/Dollemore or scan my QR code to get their top-tier Vantage plan for 50% off, which comes down to just about $4 per month. Ground News is completely independent, nonpartisan, and they are not manipulating algorithms. They also don't show ads on their platform for clickbait. Instead, they organize every story by perspective, highlighting the outlet's bias and credibility, as well as their financial backers, so you know exactly who is controlling the narrative that they're spinning. You can filter out extremist outlets to focus on reliable reporting that actually matters. Think of the time you can save when sifting through biased coverage and misinformation. You might even find a new and highly credible outlet that could use your support. So your Ground News subscription would also protect independent media voices that are daily under attack. We're watching institutions that keep our democracy transparent and accountable crumble right before our eyes. That's why I trust Ground News to make sure the truth never gets buried. You should too.